The ocean had always terrified Mira, not because of the storms, not because of the creatures hidden beneath its waves, but because every single evening, just before sunset, her grandfather would paddle alone into the endless sea and return long after darkness had swallowed the horizon. No one in the village dared ask where he went. Those who once followed him never tried a second time. Some claimed thick black fog appeared from nowhere and forced them back. Others whispered that strange voices called their names from beneath the water. A few simply stared at the ocean whenever anyone mentioned the old fisherman, their faces draining of color before changing the subject. Mira never believed those stories. She thought adults invented mysteries because ordinary life felt too small. But everything changed the morning her grandfather disappeared. His canoe drifted back by itself. No paddle, no fishing nets, no sign of a struggle, only a small silver compass resting perfectly in the center of the boat. Its needle didn't point north. It spun endlessly, as if searching for something the world had forgotten. The villagers gathered silently around the empty canoe. Nobody cried. Nobody searched. Instead, every elder lowered their heads, removed their hats, and whispered the same sentence. "The guardian has fallen." Mira frowned. Guardian? Her grandfather had been many things. A storyteller, a fisherman, the kindest old man in the village. But a guardian? She had never heard that word connected to him. When she asked the village chief what it meant, the old woman simply took one trembling step backward. "You must leave the shore before sunset." Why? Because tonight. She stopped herself. Her eyes drifted toward the ocean. The sea will notice he's gone. A cold breeze swept through the harbor. The waves, calm only moments before, suddenly became perfectly still. Even the gulls stopped crying. Silence covered the coast like an invisible blanket. Mira looked across the water, far away. Something moved beneath the surface. Not swimming, watching. She blinked. It disappeared. Everyone hurried home. Doors slammed shut. Windows were locked. Candles were extinguished long before nightfall. The village became strangely lifeless, except for one tiny cottage near the cliffs, her grandfather's home. It had remained untouched. The villagers refused to enter, even after his disappearance, especially after it. That night, unable to sleep, Mira held the strange silver compass in her hands. Its needle had finally stopped spinning. Now it pointed directly toward the sea. She turned it around. The needle refused to move, always pointing west, always toward the dark horizon. Curiosity defeated fear. Just before midnight, she wrapped herself in a thick blue cloak and slipped outside, unnoticed. Moonlight painted the village in silver. The streets felt abandoned. Only the distant sound of waves echoed across the cliffs. She pushed open the door to her grandfather's cottage. Dust floated through the moonbeams. Everything looked exactly as he had left it. A warm wooden table, old fishing maps, shelves packed with seashells from places she had never heard of, a faded lantern, his favorite rocking chair. It still moved gently, back and forth, as though someone invisible had stood up only moments earlier. Mira forced herself to breathe. "It's only the wind," she whispered. But there was no wind inside. The compass vibrated softly, almost like a heartbeat. She followed it through the cottage, past the fireplace, past rows of carved wooden fish, toward an enormous bookshelf that covered the back wall. The compass pulsed brighter. Its silver glow reflected across the dusty floor. She reached toward the shelf. One book caught her attention immediately. Unlike the others, it had no title. Its cover shimmered like wet stone. When she touched it, click, a hidden mechanism echoed behind the wall. The bookshelf slowly slid sideways. Behind it waited a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Cold air rushed upward. Not the smell of earth, not the smell of mold. Salt, fresh ocean salt. Her heart pounded. Her grandfather had hidden an entire underground passage beneath his house. She lit the lantern. Each step downward grew colder. The stone walls became strangely smooth. Ancient symbols covered every surface. They resembled waves, stars, eyes, and enormous circles surrounding a city beneath the sea. The deeper she descended, the louder the distant sound became. At first, she thought it was water. Then she realized someone was singing, a low, haunting melody unlike anything she had ever heard. Not happy, not sad, ancient, as if countless voices were singing together from somewhere impossibly far away. The tunnel finally opened to a vast underground chamber. Mira froze. Hundreds of canoes lined the walls, each one beautifully carved, each carrying a different symbol, a whale, a turtle, a moon, a crown. Some looked centuries old, others appeared brand new. At the center of the chamber stood a giant circular pool connected directly to the ocean. The water inside glowed faintly blue. Above it hung dozens of crystal lanterns. None had flames, yet they shone softly. In the middle of the pool floated her grandfather's canoe, perfectly still, untouched, impossible. The empty canoe had already returned to the village, hadn't it? She stepped closer. The compass grew warm. Suddenly, the surface of the glowing water rippled. A voice emerged from nowhere, soft, familiar. Mira. She spun around. No one. Again. Mira. This time it came from the water itself. The glowing surface slowly transformed to a mirror. Instead of reflecting the cave, it reflected her grandfather. He looked exactly as he had the day before he disappeared, calm, smiling, but behind him stretched an enormous underwater city glowing with thousands of blue lights. Gigantic towers rose from the ocean floor. Bridges made of crystal connected floating domes. Schools of luminous fish swam through streets instead of canals. Massive turtles carried entire gardens upon their shells. Whales larger than castles circled peacefully above the city. Everything shimmered beneath an endless sea. It was breathtaking. It was impossible. And yet, her grandfather stood there as though it were home. "You found the chamber," he said gently. Tears filled Mira's eyes. "Grandpa, where are you? Are you live?" "I don't have much time." His smile faded. "They're already searching." "Who's searching?" He looked over his shoulder. For the first time, fear appeared in his eyes. The shadows. Before she could ask another question, something enormous moved behind him. The beautiful city darkened. Thousands of lights flickered. The water around the towers turned black. Then she saw them. Not creatures, not fish, not monsters. They looked like living darkness, towering figures with glowing silver eyes drifting silently through the water. Everywhere they passed, light disappeared, plants withered, buildings cracked, even the sea itself seemed afraid. One of them slowly turned toward her, even though she was only seeing a reflection. Its eyes locked directly onto hers. A terrible pressure crushed her chest. The crystal lanterns shattered all around the chamber. The glowing pool exploded upward like a fountain. The mirror vanished. Her grandfather's image disappeared. Only one sentence echoed through the cave. They know who you are now. The chamber trembled violently. Cracks spread across the ceiling. Water poured through the stone. The ancient symbols along the walls suddenly burst into brilliant blue light. The compass opened by itself. Inside rested a tiny pearl unlike any she had ever seen, dark as midnight, yet filled with countless stars. The singing stopped. Silence returned. Then, far above, somewhere out on the real ocean, a deafening horn echoed across the night. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound shook the entire island. Every villager woke instantly. Candles lit every window. Bells rang wildly. People screamed. Outside the cave entrance, hundreds of frightened voices shouted the same words. "The black tide is coming." Mira looked once more at the glowing pearl resting inside the compass, then toward the hidden canoe floating silently in the underground pool. For the first time in her life, she understood that her grandfather had never gone fishing. Every sunset, he had been protecting something the entire world had forgotten. And now, whatever he had held back for decades was finally coming to the surface. The first wave struck before dawn, not against the village, against the silence. Every bird abandoned the cliffs at once, filling the sky with frantic wings. Dogs howled without stopping. The fishing boats tied to the docks began rocking violently, even though the sea remained unnaturally calm. Mira climbed the stone staircase as fast as she could, clutching the silver compass against her chest. By the time she reached her grandfather's cottage, the entire village had gathered along the shoreline. No one spoke. Every face was turned toward the western horizon. At first, she saw nothing. Then, a thin black line appeared where the ocean met the sky. It slowly widened, not like a storm, like ink spreading across clear water. The sea itself was changing color. Children cried. Mothers pulled them inside. Old sailors whispered prayers that had not been spoken for generations. The black tide. Mira heard someone breathe. It has returned. The village chief noticed the compass in Mira's hands. For a brief moment, hope crossed the old woman's tired face. "You found it. You knew about this? I prayed you never would." Before Mira could ask another question, the chief motioned for her to follow. They entered the oldest building in the village, a round stone hall built long before anyone could remember. Massive wooden beams supported its ceiling, each carved with whales, moons, waves, and unfamiliar symbols identical to those inside the underground chamber. At the center of the room stood an enormous circular table. Around it waited 12 empty chairs. Only one was occupied. An elderly man dressed in a faded blue cloak. His blind eyes remained fixed on the compass. "So," he whispered, "the sea chose another guardian." Mira frowned. "I didn't choose anything." "No?" The old man smiled sadly. "It chose you before you were born." The village chief sighed. "It is time she learns the truth." She opened a weathered chest resting beneath the table. Inside lay dozens of journals, maps, ancient drawings, broken compasses, pearls of every imaginable color. The oldest journal looked almost ready to fall apart. Its cover carried a familiar name, Elias, her grandfather. Mira carefully opened the first page. The handwriting was unmistakably his. "If you are reading this, then I have failed." Her hands trembled. "The city beneath the sea has remained hidden for thousands of years, protected not by walls, but by a promise." The next pages revealed paintings unlike anything she had imagined. An underwater kingdom illuminated by crystal forests. Children riding giant sea turtles. Libraries built inside living coral. palaces woven from glowing shells. At the center stood an immense sapphire tower that reached almost to the surface. Beneath one illustration, Elias had written, "The City of Nareth, the last sanctuary of ocean magic." Mira looked up. It was real. The blind elder nodded. It still is. But why hide it? His expression darkened. Because humanity once tried to conquer it. The room fell silent. The people of the surface feared what they could not control. They hunted magical creatures. They stole enchanted pearls. They poisoned sacred waters, searching for power. He paused. The people of Nareth refused to fight. They disappeared beneath the ocean instead. They built a city no greedy king could ever reach. The chief continued. But they were not alone. She pointed toward another illustration. Everything inside Mira seemed to freeze. The drawing showed enormous shadow-like figures with glowing silver eyes, exactly like those she had seen behind her grandfather. The shadows, they existed long before humanity. They are born wherever hope disappears. They cannot create. They cannot dream. They only consume light. The elder leaned forward. For centuries, they searched for Nareth. They failed. Not because they were weak, but because every generation one guardian remained above the sea. Mira slowly looked toward the journal. My grandfather protected the entrance. The chief nodded. Every sunset, every storm, every lonely voyage, for 43 years. A painful silence settled over the room. Mira suddenly remembered every evening she had watched his tiny canoe disappear beyond the horizon. She had imagined him fishing. He had actually been standing between two worlds, alone, every single night. The realization hurt more than his disappearance itself. He never told me. He wanted you to have a normal childhood. The elder smiled sadly. But guardians rarely choose their children. The sea chooses. Mira looked again at the compass. The tiny black pearl resting inside pulsed softly. What is this? Every elder in the room immediately stood. The abyss pearl. No, the blind elder corrected. The heart pearl. The key. The lock. The promise. Mira looked confused. I don't understand. You will. He reached into another chest and removed an enormous map, unlike any she had ever seen. It showed no continents, only currents, invisible rivers flowing beneath the ocean. Dozens converged toward one place marked by a silver circle. The gate, the entrance to Nareth. But it only appears under one condition. When? When the heart pearl accepts its guardian. The pearl suddenly became warm. A bright blue line appeared across the ancient map. Then another. The invisible currents began glowing. The path was revealing itself. Everyone in the room stared in stunned silence. It has never reacted this quickly, the chief whispered. Before anyone could speak again, boom! The entire hall shook. Dust rained from the ceiling, another impact, then another. People screamed outside. Mira rushed toward the window. The ocean had changed completely. The black tide had reached the harbor. It wasn't water anymore. It looked alive. Dark waves crawled across the sea like liquid smoke. Where they touched the cliffs, flowers instantly withered. Grass turned gray. Wood rotted within seconds. Fishing boats dissolved into black dust. Then something emerged. At first she thought they were broken tree trunks floating upright. Then they moved. Towering figures rose silently from the Black Sea. 10, 20, 50, hundreds, each at least twice as tall as a man. Featureless bodies formed from shifting darkness, Only their silver eyes remained perfectly visible. No mouths, no faces, just endless darkness, watching. The villagers fled in terror. The shadows stepped onto the shore without making footprints. Light faded wherever they walked. Even sunlight seemed afraid to touch them. One raised a long arm. The village lighthouse exploded. Without a sound, only shattered stone. Panic erupted. The chief turned toward Mira. They've never reached the island before. They've become stronger. The blind elder whispered one impossible sentence. They are no longer searching for the city. They are searching for you. Mira's heart skipped. Why me? Nobody answered. Instead, the compass answered. Its needle spun wildly, then pointed inland, toward the cliffs, toward the ancient forest beyond the village. The vault, the elder breathed. You must reach it first. What is the vault? The place where every guardian receives their oath. There isn't time to explain. He grabbed an old bronze key hanging around his neck. Its shape resembled two intertwined waves. He pressed it into Mira's hand. Run. What about everyone else? We will buy you time. You can't fight those things. No, he smiled gently, but we can remind them. That courage still exists. Before she could protest, every elder walked calmly outside, one after another. 12 old men and women carrying nothing except weathered lanterns. The shadows stopped moving, watching them. The village chief lifted her lantern. Its ordinary flame suddenly transformed into brilliant blue light. The others did the same. For the first time, the shadows hesitated, not afraid, remembering. The elders began singing the exact same ancient melody Mira had heard beneath her grandfather's cottage. The air vibrated. The ocean answered. Blue currents appeared beneath the waves. The black tide slowed, only for a moment, but it was enough. Go! The chief shouted. Mira ran. Behind her, the song grew louder, then louder still. The forest swallowed her. Ancient pines blocked the morning light. The compass continued pointing deeper between the trees. Branches twisted into impossible shapes. The farther she walked, the quieter the world became. Soon, she realized something terrifying. She could no longer hear the sea, not even the wind, only her own footsteps. Then another pair of footsteps answered them. She froze. Silence. She continued walking. Step, step, step. Another set followed, always matching hers, never faster, never slower. She spun around. Nobody. The forest stood perfectly still. The compass vibrated violently. A whisper drifted through the trees. Mira? It sounded exactly like her grandfather. She almost answered. Then she remembered. He had warned her. The shadows know who you are now. The voice came again. Mira, help me. Closer this time, painful, desperate. She squeezed her eyes shut and kept walking. The whisper became dozens of whispers, then hundreds. Every voice belonged to someone she loved. Her grandfather, her mother, friends, children from the village, all calling her name, begging her to turn around. She refused. The voices became screams, then laughter, then silence. When she finally opened her eyes, the forest had disappeared. She stood before a perfectly still lake, surrounded by towering white stones. At its center rose a tiny island. Upon it stood a single tree unlike any she had ever seen. Its trunk shimmered like silver. Its leaves glowed deep blue. Thousands of tiny pearls hung from its branches instead of fruit. The compass stopped vibrating. The heart pearl floated gently into the air. One pearl on the ancient tree answered with the same light. The two lights connected. The lake began to glow. And slowly, an invisible bridge of water rose from beneath the surface, leading toward the mysterious island. Mira took one careful step forward. She had no idea that someone else was already watching from beneath the lake. Not a shadow, something far older, something that had waited centuries for the arrival of the next guardian. Mira stepped onto the bridge. The water beneath her feet felt solid, yet it rippled with every heartbeat instead of every step. Blue light spread outward in perfect circles, disturbing the mirror-like surface of the lake. The moment she reached the halfway point, the world around her disappeared. The forest, the sky, the wind, everything dissolved into white light. When the brightness finally faded, she was no longer standing beside the lake. She stood inside an endless ocean, yet she could breathe. Above her floated waves instead of clouds. Schools of glowing fish drifted through the air like birds. Constellations shimmered beneath her feet. It felt as though the sea and the heavens had exchanged places. A voice echoed across the impossible horizon. "Welcome, guardian." The silver tree had transformed. Its trunk slowly unfolded into the shape of a towering woman woven from living coral, moonlight, and crystal water. Her hair flowed like gentle currents, carrying tiny stars through every strand. Her eyes held the color of the deepest ocean. "I am Lysara," she said, "the first guardian." Mira stared in awe. "You've been waiting for me?" "For every guardian," Lysara smiled sadly, "and for the day one would arrive too late." The words struck Mira like ice. "I'm too late?" The balance has already been broken. Lysara raised one graceful hand. The ocean around them changed. Visions appeared within the water. Mira watched the history of Nareth unfold. She saw the magical city being built beneath the sea thousands of years earlier. She saw humans and the people of Nareth once living together peacefully. She saw children from both worlds laughing together. Then, greed arrived. Kings demanded the pearls of creation. Armies sailed across the sea. Sacred reefs burned. Ancient sea creatures were hunted. The people of Nareth chose mercy instead of war. Rather than destroy humanity, they disappeared. Lysara continued. "The heart pearl does not hide the city. It hides something imprisoned beneath it." The vision shifted again. Far below Nareth, beneath the sapphire tower, an endless abyss stretched into darkness. At its center floated a massive sphere of crystal chains. Inside, something slept, or at least it had once slept. A crack slowly spread across the prison. Mira whispered, "What is that?" Lysara's expression became heavy. "The King of Shadows, the first creature born before light reached the ocean. He does not seek to rule. He seeks silence. He believes a universe without hope cannot suffer." The memory faded. The city of Nareth was built directly above his prison. The guardians never protected the city. They protected the seal. Mira felt her stomach tighten. "My grandfather protected the final entrance for 43 years. Lysara nodded. "When he disappeared, the seal weakened, but it did not break. Then why are the shadows attacking?" "Because they have found something stronger than the seal." "They found you?" Before Mira could ask why. The heart pearl rose from the compass and floated between them. Its dark surface reflected countless stars. "The pearl chooses only those willing to sacrifice everything. It chose your grandfather. It has now chosen you. I don't want this. No guardian ever has." The ground trembled violently. Cracks spread across the endless ocean beneath them. A deep roar echoed from somewhere, impossibly far away. Lysara looked toward the horizon. They're here. The vision shattered. Mira found herself standing once again upon the tiny island, except now. The lake had turned black. The white stones surrounding it were crumbling. The glowing tree began losing its light. From beneath the dark water, dozens of silver eyes slowly opened. The shadows had found the vault. They rose silently from the lake, not walking, floating. Hundreds surrounded the island without making a sound. At their center appeared one unlike the others, twice as large. Its body shifted like an endless eclipse. Its silver eyes contained entire galaxies, fading into darkness. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere. "We remember you." Mira could barely breathe. "I've never met you." "No, but your soul has." The creature extended one long arm. Within its darkness appeared countless faces, every guardian, every generation, every sacrifice. They had all stood exactly where she stood now. "You cannot stop what is coming. We have already won." Mira remembered her grandfather's smile. She remembered every lonely sunset he had spent upon the ocean, every birthday he had quietly left early, every promise he had carried without complaint. "No," she answered softly. "You only think you have." The giant shadow laughed. The sound froze the lake. "You are one child. You carry the weight of an entire world. You will break." Mira looked down at the heart pearl. Then she understood. The pearl was not becoming brighter because it possessed power. It became brighter whenever she chose courage over fear. Every act of hope strengthened it. Every sacrifice fed its light. Her grandfather had never defeated the shadows through strength. He had simply refused to surrender. Again and again, for 43 years. Mira closed her eyes. "I accept." The heart pearl burst into brilliant blue light. Every pearl hanging from the silver tree answered. Thousands of beams shot into the sky. Across the island, across the ocean, across the world, far beneath the sea, the city of Nareth awakened. Crystal towers blazed like stars. Ancient gates opened. Gigantic whales began singing. Sea dragons emerged from forgotten caverns. Turtles, carrying forests, swam toward the sapphire city. The ocean itself seemed to breathe. The shadows hesitated. For the first time, they stepped backward. Then the sea exploded upward. A colossal circle of glowing water rose from the horizon, like an enormous doorway opening between worlds. The hidden city finally revealed itself. Nareth, more beautiful than any legend had ever described. Millions of shimmering lights illuminated its streets. Children looked upward in wonder. Elders knelt in silent gratitude. Every inhabitant turned toward Mira, not as a queen, not as a hero, as their guardian. The sapphire tower released a single beam of light toward the heart pearl. The pearl answered. Together they formed a bridge of pure ocean magic stretching into the abyss beneath the city. Deep below, the crystal prison surrounding the King of Shadows began repairing itself. Every crack closed. Every chain regained its light. The giant shadow screamed. "No!" Its army rushed forward, but something incredible happened. The people of Nareth did not hide. They swam together, thousands, then millions, each carrying a glowing pearl, each offering a fragment of their own hope. The lights merged into one endless ocean of blue. The darkness struck it and dissolved, not destroyed, healed. One by one the shadows lost their monstrous forms. The silver eyes softened. Darkness peeled away like smoke beneath sunlight. Inside, every shadow stood a luminous spirit, ancient, peaceful, free. Lysara's voice echoed through the sea. They were never born evil. They were born alone. the king taught them that hope always ends in pain. You reminded them otherwise. The enormous leader looked at Mira one final time. Its terrifying shape had vanished. Only a weary figure remained. For a brief moment, it smiled, then dissolved into thousands of tiny stars that drifted into the ocean. Silence returned. Gentle waves replaced the black tide. Flowers along the cliffs bloomed once more. The dead grass turned green. The broken lighthouse slowly rebuilt itself from glowing coral carried by the sea. Back in the village, the elders lowered their lanterns. The blue flames faded peacefully. Many smiled through tears. They knew the battle was over. Hours later, as sunrise painted the ocean gold, Mira stood alone inside the harbor. The hidden city had disappeared once more beneath the waves, protected again, not by secrecy alone, but by trust. She looked toward the horizon where her grandfather had vanished. A familiar canoe drifted gently across the calm sea, empty, until someone quietly stepped inside. Elias, no longer tired, no longer burdened by endless duty. He smiled exactly as he always had. You did better than I ever could. Tears filled Mira's eyes. I couldn't have done it without you. You already did. He touched the brim of his old hat. The sea no longer needs one lonely guardian. Mira frowned. What do you mean? He looked toward the village. Children were laughing on the beach again. Families helped one another rebuild. Fishermen repaired boats together. The people of Nareth could be seen just barely as shimmering silhouettes beneath the crystal-clear water. Look carefully. She did. Everywhere she looked, people were helping someone else, offering hope, choosing kindness, choosing courage. Her grandfather smiled. Now, we all guard the light. His canoe slowly drifted into the morning mist. This time, it never returned. Some people believe the strongest heroes are the ones who defeat monsters. But the greatest guardians are the ones who keep hope alive when darkness whispers that it is pointless. Mira's journey reminds us that fear grows when we face it alone, while courage spreads from one heart to another. Her grandfather did not protect the world because he was the strongest person alive. He protected it because every single day he chose not to give up. In the end, that choice inspired an entire city, an entire village, and even those who had been consumed by darkness. The greatest battles are rarely won by force. They are won through compassion, perseverance, and the willingness to carry hope even when no one else can see it. Because every act of kindness becomes a light. Every light inspires another. And when enough lights shine together, even the deepest shadows cannot survive. If this story captured your imagination, there's much more to come. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new tale. Until next time, take care and keep wondering.